Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Rabbi.
We are learning Mishna Nedarim, Parak Vav, Chapter 6, Mishna Tes, Mishna 9. Hanoidim in Ayayin, if a person makes a neder, excuse me, that prohibits him from wine, that's his neder, from yayin, from wine. Mutter b'yayin tapuchim, he's allowed to have apple wine. Because when people say wine, they mean grape wine, not apple wine. Even though they call it apple wine, nonetheless, the only time you talk, if you just say the word yayin wine, so that always is going to mean grape wine. Something like the apple wine is called apple wine. Okay, that's the first example in the Mishnah. Min hashemen, if the neder prohibits him from oil, that's the neder he made. He's forbidden to consume oil. Mutter b'shemen shemen, he's allowed to have sesame oil. Because again, the word shemen plain is always used to refer to olive oil. Any other oil like the sesame oil is called sesame oil. Min advash, he says from honey. Okay. Mutter b'dvash tamarim, you're allowed to have date honey. The word honey alone always refers to, when people use the word honey plain, what are they referring to? Bee honey. But date honey, that is always called date honey. Now here on the bottom, in the notes, they bring down an interesting point, which is, although the honey mentioned in the Torah means date honey, when the Torah says the word davash, doesn't say what kind of davash, it says davash. What davash is that in the Torah? Date honey, not bee honey. Nonetheless, the meaning of a neder is based on popular usage, according to which honey refers only to bee honey. When people say the word honey, they mean bee honey. Okay. Next, menachaimitz. The neder prohibits him from vinegar. Mutter b'chaimitz sisvaniyos. He is permitted to partake of the winter grape vinegar. Because your typical vinegar is vinegar that is made from wine vinegar, meaning grape wine vinegar, and any other vinegar would be called, like, they wouldn't just when you use the word vinegar alone, you mean wine vinegar, and this is a different type of vinegar, which again is typically referred to as winter grape vinegar, like we had yesterday.
We don't talk about here. We don't talk about vinegar as being wine vinegar.
That is true. Nowadays.
Today.
Right? Okay. That's a very good point, because as we said, the Mishnah is dealing with the usages of that time and place. Okay. Minakration. He prohibits himself from creation. Creation are leaks. Okay. Mutter b'kafloites. That person may partake from something called kafloites. Kafloites were a type of leek with a large bulb that grew in Eretz Yisrael. But when you refer to leeks, that just using the word leek, you would not refer to that. You would call it kapletes, and therefore it's not included in your neder. Now, let's say he says min hayarak. He forbids himself from yarak, which is vegetables. Right? You just used the word vegetables. Mutter b'yarkais hasada. He'd be permitted to partake from wild vegetables, meaning vegetables that grow out in the wild. Because mishum shehu mishem levai. Because when you're talking about the wild vegetables, it is a name with an attachment. That is, when a person refers to wild vegetables, he always attaches the word wild to vegetables and never refers to them as vegetables alone. Therefore, neder prohibiting vegetables alone does not include wild vegetables. Rather, it includes regular vegetables. Okay? And so basically, as they kind of sum it up here in the bottom of the notes, the explanation the Mishnah gives here applies to its previous cases as well. A neder directed at wine, oil, etc. includes only items known by those terms alone, not items to which another word is always attached, such as apple wine and sesame oil. Meaning these last two words, mishum shem levai, because it is a name with an attachment, means to say that any time you have a name with an attachment, meaning you don't just say oil, you say sesame oil. You're saying it's something, meaning sesame oil is always called sesame oil, not just oil. Apple wine is called apple wine, not just wine. Once something has an attachment to it, meaning it's called something oil or something wine, then already that's not included when the word wine, when the word is used without any kind of, let's call it, descriptive attachment. Now, the Bartanura adds something very interesting. The last halach in the Mishnah says that when you say yaraka, when you say yarak, vegetables, you don't mean wild vegetables, because you would never refer to wild vegetables just as vegetables. You call them wild vegetables. But there's an exception to that. You know when? Shemitah. In Shemitah, when you cannot grow the vegetables, and the vegetables that you're going to typically be eating are wild vegetables, because those are the ones you may partake of. In the Shemitah year, if you say vegetables, what are you referring to? Wild vegetables. Because that's a situation where you would call wild vegetables without calling them wild vegetables. You would just call them vegetables, because those are really the primary vegetables those are the only vegetables you really have. Or at least the primary vegetables. So that's what it says here. About Shvius during Shemitah, meaning that you don't have, garden vegetables available, because you got to work them. You can't work it during Shemitah. That's when they eat the wild vegetables. Therefore, in Shemitah, when you just say the word yerakas, you just say vegetables, you mean wild vegetables. So that's the exception to the rule. The rest of the year, you just say vegetables, it means garden vegetables, not wild vegetables. Because in the other years, you would call them wild vegetables. But in Shemitah, since those are the only vegetables that are common, are the wild vegetables, then in the Shemitah year, if you made this neder about that you cannot have vegetables, it would include the wild ones. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Rabbi. So you're permitted to have vegetables